Welcome to Inside News. I am Serena. Tonight is Friday, October 17th, 2025. A former top national security official faces espionage charges. The world's two largest economies stand on the brink of an all-out trade war. And in the Middle East, a fragile peace brings hostages home, even as the path forward remains uncertain. Plus, the stories you haven't heard. The silent literacy crisis crippling a generation, and the coastal communities being swallowed by the sea. We begin with tonight's major developments and a political earthquake in Washington. Former National Security Advisor John Bolton, once one of the most powerful figures in the White House, surrendered to federal authorities today. He faces an 18-count indictment under the Espionage Act for the mishandling and illegal transmission of classified information. The charges, which each carry a potential 10-year prison sentence, represent a stunning downfall for a man who has become one of President Trump's most prominent Republican critics. The indictment alleges that Bolton used personal email and messaging accounts to send over 1,000 pages of his sensitive, diary-like notes to two relatives who did not have security clearance. These notes contained information classified at the highest levels, detailing his day-to-day activities and briefings at the heart of the U.S. national security apparatus. In a dangerous twist, prosecutors say one of those personal email accounts was later hacked by a cyber actor believed to be linked to the government of Iran, potentially exposing state secrets to a hostile foreign power. This case does not exist in a vacuum. It is the third time in recent weeks that the Justice Department has brought charges against a high-profile critic of the president, following indictments against former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James. This pattern has fueled accusations that the nation's top law enforcement agency is being deployed as a tool for political retribution. In a statement, Bolton himself called the charges an abuse of power designed to intimidate opponents, while President Trump simply referred to his former advisor as a bad guy. The indictment of John Bolton has become a critical stress test for American institutions, raising profound questions about whether the rule of law is being applied impartially or being weaponized in the political arena. We move now to the Middle East, where after 738 agonizing days, there is a breakthrough. A landmark ceasefire agreement, brokered by the United States, has taken hold between Israel and Hamas, resulting in the release of all 20 remaining living Israeli hostages. Emotional scenes unfolded as they were reunited with their families after more than 2 years in captivity. The agreement is a complex reciprocal deal that has also seen Israel begin the process of freeing over 1,900 Palestinian prisoners from its jails. The ceasefire is also a critical lifeline for the people of Gaza. After a 2-year war that has left much of the territory in ruins, a surge of humanitarian aid is now flowing in, with up to 600 trucks per day expected to enter, carrying food, medicine, and essential supplies to combat what has been described as famine-like conditions in Gaza City. To mark the occasion, world leaders, including President Trump, gathered in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, for a summit of peace. While largely ceremonial, it represents a moment of cautious optimism in a region starved for it. This is, however, a profoundly precarious moment. The agreement is a cessation of hostilities, not a permanent resolution. The most difficult questions, the disarmament of Hamas, the future governance of Gaza, and the final status of Israeli forces, remain entirely unresolved. As this graphic shows, the deal is a series of carefully balanced steps, any one of which could falter and plunge the region back into conflict. Turning to Europe, Ukraine finds itself walking a diplomatic tightrope, caught between its most crucial ally and its declared enemy. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is in Washington today for a critical meeting with President Trump. His mission: to make a direct appeal for long-range Tomahawk cruise missiles, weapons Kyiv believes are essential for its defense against Russia. But his visit has been dramatically overshadowed. Just hours before their meeting, the White House announced that President Trump held what he called a very productive phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin and has agreed to a summit in Budapest. That announcement has severely dimmed hopes in Kyiv that a deal for the advanced weapons is imminent. This places Ukraine in an exceptionally vulnerable position, dependent on a key ally for its survival, while that same ally engages in direct, high-level talks with its aggressor. This situation highlights the stark reality for smaller nations whose fates can be shaped by the shifting priorities of superpowers. This is all happening as the European Union unveils its own bold new strategy to counter Moscow. The Defense Readiness Roadmap 2030 is a 5-year plan to massively build up the continent's military capabilities, including a sophisticated drone defense shield, in a clear message that Europe intends to take more responsibility for its own security, from Europe to the Asia-Pacific, where the global economy is on a nice edge. The simmering trade dispute between the United States and China has erupted into open economic conflict. In response to new Chinese restrictions on the export of rare earth minerals, elements vital for everything from smartphones to jet engines, President Trump has threatened to impose a staggering 100% tariff on all Chinese goods, starting November 1st. This move, which would effectively double the price of many Chinese imports, sent global markets into a tailspin, with the S&P 500 suffering its worst day in months. China's action to weaponize its near monopoly on the rare earth supply chain is a strategic move that exposes a critical vulnerability in Western manufacturing and defense industries. President Trump's tariff threat is being seen not as a negotiating tactic, but as a declaration of economic warfare. Analysts are warning of mutually assured disruption, a state of conflict that could shatter global supply chains and trigger a worldwide recession, demonstrating that economic interdependence has now become the primary battleground for geopolitical supremacy. Our focus shifts to Africa, a continent in flux. In Madagascar, the military has seized control of the country. Colonel Michael Randrianirina, leader of an elite army unit, is being sworn in as president today, following a coup that forced President Andry Rajoelina to flee the island nation. The takeover was not a traditional power grab, but the culmination of weeks of massive youth-led protests. A movement calling itself Gen Z Madagascar brought the country to a standstill, demonstrating against systemic corruption, poverty, and a collapsing infrastructure. The African Union has responded by suspending Madagascar's membership, while the United Nations condemned the unconstitutional change of government. Meanwhile, in Kenya, tragedy and unrest. Thousands gathered in the capital, Nairobi, to mourn the death of veteran opposition leader Raila Odinga, who passed away at the age of 80. The peaceful mourning turned chaotic and violent as security forces fired on the crowds, killing at least 4 people and injuring many more. That concludes our main coverage. Now, stories that need your attention. Now, we turn to stories that receive insufficient attention but carry significant consequences. We begin in the United States with a crisis that is unfolding not on the streets, but in the classroom. A silent epidemic is crippling a generation of young Americans. According to a startling new federal report, 1 in 4 people between the ages of 16 and 24 are now functionally illiterate. That is a catastrophic rise from just 6 years ago, when the figure was 1 in 6. Even more disturbing, the report finds that literacy scores among high school graduates are falling faster than for any other group, even as official graduation rates are climbing. This has created a dangerous paradox of credentialed illiteracy, a generation emerging with diplomas but without the fundamental ability to comprehend a job contract, follow medical instructions, or fully understand a ballot. Experts blame a perfect storm of pandemic-era learning loss, chronic underfunding in schools, and a technology trap where critical thinking is being replaced by quick searches and AI summaries. The long-term consequences for the economy, civic discourse, and democracy itself are profound. Moving to Europe, where a multi-billion euro digital heist is targeting thousands of citizens and authorities are struggling to fight back. An industrial-scale online investment fraud machine is costing Europeans more than 4 billion euros a year. Transnational criminal networks, some operating from call centers in Serbia, are deploying sophisticated tactics to steal life savings. They use AI to create deep fake videos of celebrities endorsing fake investment platforms and run massive advertising campaigns on social media to lure in victims. Once a person invests a small amount, they are shown a fake trading screen with soaring profits, convincing them to pour in more money, in some cases hundreds of thousands of euros, before the scammers vanish. Europol has warned that this new wave of digital fraud, supercharged by AI, is growing at an unprecedented rate, and national police forces admit they are overwhelmed, lacking the capacity to stop the flood of scams. It is a new frontier of organized crime that has become as profitable as drug trafficking, and it is flourishing in the largely unregulated spaces of social media. Staying with underreported news, we move to Africa, to a coastline that is literally disappearing. In the fishing communities of Ghana, climate change is not a future threat. It is a daily lived catastrophe. Along the nation's 550-kilometer coast, the sea is advancing at an average rate of 2 meters every year, swallowing homes, schools, and ancestral lands. Entire villages like Fuveme have been wiped off the map, its former residents now climate refugees in their own country. This relentless erosion is caused by rising sea levels and more powerful tidal waves, a direct consequence of a warming planet, and it is made worse by local sand mining, which weakens the shoreline. For the artisanal fishing families who depend on the ocean for their survival, the crisis is existential. Their boats are damaged, their traditional landing sites are gone, and the very foundation of their culture and economy is being washed away, a stark and tragic illustration of the human cost of a global environmental crisis. Finally, developments in the Middle East, beyond the headlines of the ceasefire. The story of a propagandist's end reveals a more complex reality inside Gaza. Saleh al-Jafrawi, an online influencer known to his followers as Mr. Fafo, was a prominent pro-Hamas propagandist who gained fame for his videos during the war. After his recent death, many activists and some media outlets quickly framed a narrative that he was a journalist killed by Israeli forces. However, information largely ignored by Western media tells a different story. Reports from the region indicate al-Jafrawi was actually killed by fellow Palestinians. His death allegedly occurred while he was accompanying a notorious Hamas unit that was carrying out a violent crackdown on a rival clan in Gaza City. This story is further complicated by accusations from the Palestinian Authority that al-Jafrawi had embezzled funds donated to rebuild a children's hospital. His death is a case study in modern information warfare, revealing the brutal internal power struggles often hidden behind the broader conflict narrative, and challenging the simplistic portrayals of victim and perpetrator. From the crisis in our classrooms to the coastlines under threat, these are the stories that shape our world, often from the shadows. Thank you for joining us on Inside News, where we believe that what is underreported is often what is most important. Good journey to all.